Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
Hey everyone, my name is Bethany Acheson. I'm a senior product designer at Liberty Mutual Insurance. I'm thrilled to be here today, both attending and speaking at my first Boston Women's Leadership Conference. As a product designer, it's my job to create an easy and delightful online experience for users. We spend so much of our time online these days. And now more than ever, it's critical that websites are simple and intuitive. I've created and optimized a variety of user experiences while in my time at Liberty. One of my first projects involved creating a document center where customers can go to learn about their insurance documents and instantly download their policy for proof of insurance. I grew up in Falmouth, Maine, and I now live in Beverly, Massachusetts with my husband, my two kids. I have a daughter, Violet, who's 10, and a son, Ridley, who's 13. We have two cats named Buddha and Mogwai. I live about a mile from the beach, and I'm right down the street from Sally Milligan State Park. So I'm very lucky as an outdoorsy person that I get to live so close to two beautiful places and take advantage of them all the time, and it's been extremely helpful during COVID.
Oh, we are excited you're with us today. So we have your slides pulled up, so you can just say next slide and take it away.
All right, great. Once again, I'm just so happy to be here today to talk to you about something that I find fascinating. You may have heard of the term growth mindset in the past. Maybe you've already been introduced to this concept, or maybe you haven't. Regardless, today we'll learn a little bit about the growth mindset, and as we do, you may learn a little something about yourself. Take a look at these two statements. I was born with a certain amount of intelligence, and I really can't do much to change it. And the other statement, intelligence can grow over time. It doesn't matter what your IQ was when you were 10. Think about these two statements for a moment, just to yourself. The first implies that no matter what you learn or how you grow as a human, your intelligence will remain static. The second counters this belief, stating that intelligence is fluid and that as a human, you have control over your intelligence. Which of these statements do you identify with? Make a mental note, and we'll come back to this a little bit later. Recently, in one of our user experience team meetings at work, my boss introduced the topic of the growth mindset. He brought up this slide, and I've actually added some text on the side because I realized that this slide is very small and basically impossible to read. So that what you're seeing on either side is actually showing you what is in the small type on the slide. So now you'll notice that there are in fact two mindsets shown here on this slide. We see our growth mindset, and then we have our opposing mindset known as the fixed mindset. Let's talk about the fixed mindset first. A person with a fixed mindset is typically going to look for the easiest way out. If something becomes too difficult or poses too much of a challenge, then a fixed mindset has had enough and quit, moving on to something else. With a fixed mindset, effort is a waste of time. Why not stick to the things that are easy, that you already know how to do? If you have to work at it, it just means you are good at that thing in the first place. With a fixed mindset, criticism and negative feedback are viewed as humiliating and are evidence of failure. With a fixed mindset, watching others succeed feels threatening. Now, there are plenty of successful folks out there that operate with a fixed mindset. You may even be one of those people. What's unfortunate is that they typically could be even more. They typically have more potential than they allow themselves. The result is a deterministic view of the world. Now, counter to this, we have our growth mindset. With a growth mindset, challenges are sought after and embraced. Challenges are seen as an opportunity to grow and learn. With a growth mindset, obstacles are seen as opportunities. There may be setbacks and challenges along the way, but they're expected and pushed through with effort. With a growth mindset, effort is seen as the path to mastery. Effort is the choice. to try something, practice it, and sometimes totally bomb at it in order to learn and to try again. With a growth mindset, receiving criticism or negative feedback is an opportunity to learn rather than a paralyzing setback. With a growth mindset, the success of others is a source of inspiration, providing lessons and insight. The growth mindset offers the potential to meet higher levels of achievement, resulting in a greater sense of free will. Now, I decided to do some research on where this whole concept of the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset came from. After a Google search, it became clearer to me that a Stanford psychologist named Carol Dweck is the expert in this field of research. This concept of growth versus fixed mindset originated from her research studies. In one of her studies, Dweck presented 10-year-olds with some puzzles to do that were just a little bit beyond their age level in terms of difficulty. What did she observe? Some students reacted with comments like, "I love a challenge," or "I was hoping this would be informative." Other students who tried the puzzles considered themselves failures when they weren't able to solve them. They said they'd consider cheating next time, and some even looked for other children that performed worse than them to make themselves feel better. Dweck explains that a growth mindset is the belief that a person's capacities and talents can be improved over time. Those with a fixed mindset believe that you either get it or you don't. And if you don't get it, well, that just figures because I suck at everything, and why even bother? Failure is inevitable, and as opposed to the growth mindset, where failure is viewed as an opportunity, a chance to learn and improve, with a fixed mindset, you failed because you're just a failure. And now it's time to move on to something easy that you know you're good at. Now, I'm going to get real and share a little something with you about myself. If I'd been asked to speak in front of you all about 15 years ago, I would absolutely have declined the offer. There's just no way I would have voluntarily put myself in this position. When I look at this slide, I see myself on either side. The thing is, that fixed mindset me is what I'd refer to as the old me, and the growth mindset me is now, well, just me most of the time. You may be thinking, wait a second, aren't you just born with one mindset or the other? Isn't it just your personality? Are you saying that you can actually change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? Yep, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. And it can even change more than once. When I was in elementary school, I truly loved learning. I joked that recess was my favorite subject, but really, I enjoyed learning about everything, including math. Back then, math was kind of fun. There was always one correct answer. It didn't require studying the same way that spelling or geography did. You either got it or you didn't. And if you did get it, and you were careful not to make any mistakes, it was easy at first. And then along came middle school, and with that came algebra. I got the basics, but for some reason I just never really understood the concept. It was frustrating. I was usually pretty good at most things. The harder I tried to get it, the more frustrated I became. I stayed after school for extra help, and I retook tests, but I would always just kind of manage to get by. And the average to below average grades I earned were probably more for giving it a try than anything else. In other words, mercy grades. At a certain point, I decided that I just wasn't good at math. End of story. I developed a fixed mindset in relation to anything involving numbers. I was a math failure. I was so convinced that I would just never be good at it that I developed anxiety surrounding the subject. Anxiety is unpleasant. And if you can avoid that nervous, uncomfortable feeling by avoiding the thing that causes it, well then, why not just avoid it and continue to feed your fixed mindset? I'd end up taking a summer class in statistics after my freshman year to complete my math requirement, thinking it would be my best, easiest chance of passing. Newsflash, statistics is all about numbers. I was so anxious and uncomfortable in this class that I barely passed with an embarrassing D. As for the remainder of my college years, I signed up for as many art and art history classes as I could get away with because for me, those things came easily. It was something I was just good at. After college, I had plans for graduate school. I'd stay at Boston University where I'd earned my undergraduate liberal arts degree and worked towards a master's degree in art administration. I was working in one of the administrative offices at BU, so it made sense to take advantage of the tuition reimbursement. I had it all figured out, just a few more years of going to school part-time, and I'd be ready for my first real job. I was developing a growth mindset, and I wasn't even aware of it. I was excited for my future, working as a director in some cool contemporary art space. Guess what the first class was that I took towards my master's? A required class, a class I couldn't avoid. Accounting. No one told me I needed to learn accounting for a career in administration. My growth mindset was suddenly replaced with the old deterministic fixed mindset I'd worked so hard to leave behind. After 2 weeks in the accounting class, I dropped. I avoided the challenge. I gave up easily. I saw my effort as fruitless or worse. I wasn't going to stick around for the inevitable negative feedback, and I stayed in my safe office job while I secretly felt jealous of my friend that was successfully completing her master's degree. It was hard, and I gave up. For years after that, I'd work at various office jobs where I'd make just enough money to pay my rent, eat, and have a little fun on the side. It was easy for the most part. The jobs were pretty straightforward. Answer the phones, distribute the mail, make some photocopies, order some office supplies. Soon, I was bored out of my mind. And it's in those times when I'm too comfortable, things are just a little too easy, and I start to dread each day that I have to go to work, that I'll reach my breaking point. That's when I know it's time to learn something new, to develop a skill that will allow new opportunities to come my way. That's when I push my fixed mindset aside and my growth mindset comes out to play. After enjoying a short-lived but successful career as an administrative assistant, I was ready to move on immediately. A job happened to open up in the art history department where I worked. I really didn't meet the requirements for the job, but I convinced them and myself that I could do it. The growth mindset was back. I was in charge of updating the department's website with the slides from each lecture that was given that week. Only one problem. I didn't know HTML, and I was the department's webmaster. I was able to get by for quite some time, copying and pasting code. A book taught me the basics. It was actually pretty cool. You typed in some code, and then things just sort of magically appeared on a web page. If you typed the code correctly, it just worked. If you missed one character, like a /, your page wouldn't load. There was one answer when it came to code. Kind of like math. I was actually getting into this. BU happened to offer a certificate program in web design and development, and I decided to give it the old college try. This time I was invested in learning, not only so I could do my job better, but because I had taken out a hefty loan to pay for this 10-month program. I learned the basics of HTML, QBasic, Photoshop, and animation. As I was about to complete my coursework, our country experienced the largest terrorist attack in its history. This attack, devastating on so many levels, seriously impacted the U.S. economy. Job postings for the tech field were scarce, particularly for someone like myself who was entry-level. I successfully finished the program, and I was ready to officially graduate from BU by finding myself a job outside of the university. The job descriptions for any sort of web design position were intimidating. My fixed mindset was slowly creeping back into the forefront of my decision-making processes. I'd see a posting for a job that looked promising, and I'd shy away because I didn't have all the qualifications they asked for. I assumed that if a skill was required in the job description, I would have to be an expert in order to be hired. Carol Dweck speaks often of a school in Chicago where a failing grade was replaced with the grade not yet. The result? Improved performance. When students were able to get past what she refers to as the tyranny of now, and focused instead on the power of yet, they adopted a growth mindset. This mindset allowed them to see what would normally be considered a failure as an opportunity to learn. As women, it's so easy for us to fall into a fixed mindset and the tyranny of now. When we're applying for jobs, while men tend to apply beyond their skill set. Conjuring a growth mindset when applying or interviewing for a job will increase your opportunities and your confidence. When I'm interviewing a candidate for a job, the folks that are willing to learn something new for the job, who are excited at the prospect of expanding their knowledge in their field, are the candidates that move to the top of my list. Oh, sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Jill, if you need to take a stop for just a second, please take a stop for just a second. And as just a reminder, please keep those questions coming into the chat.
All right. Sorry about that. I never did find that web design job back then, but some of the skills I learned in the certificate program would put me on a slightly different path. I worked for over a decade as a photographer and digital artist. I spent most of my time working in Photoshop. And when I decided to go freelance after my kids were born, I'd made a successful career out of retouching photos and finding the occasional photography. 4 years ago, in my early 40s, I was ready for a change. I'd reached what felt like the limit in terms of my career growth. My husband, a software engineer who started his own small agency, suggested I look into user experiences. To be honest, I didn't really understand what that career entailed, but I decided to start looking into it. And before I knew it, I'd signed up for a 3-month-long full-time immersive course in UX. It had been 20 years since I sat in a classroom setting, and this time around it was totally different. I'd never enjoyed learning so much. It was so rewarding to finish this 3-month program with a completed portfolio. Allowing my growth mindset to take full control resulted in a kind of happiness I hadn't felt in a really long time. Next slide, please. By allowing myself the space to embrace a not yet mentality, I knew I couldn't fail. 20 years later, as I applied for tech jobs once again, I had a completely different mindset. I didn't need to check every box on the job listing. I could respond to a question in an interview with, I don't know yet, but I'm excited to gain more experience and work with a team that I can learn from. Next slide. Take a look at these two statements again. You saw this at the beginning of the talk. Which one do you think demonstrates a growth mindset and which demonstrates a fixed mindset? Do you remember which one you identified with more at the beginning of this talk? Intelligence isn't limited to academics. In fact, Harvard professor Howard Gardner believes in the theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner proposed that there are in fact 8 intelligences, with the possibility of a 9th called existentialist intelligence. Next slide, please. With all these different types of intelligence, we can possess the sky is really the limit in terms of how the growth mindset can be applied. I've spoken a lot about my personal academic and career experience and how implementing a growth mindset has allowed me to evolve and achieve. If we consider all the types of intelligence Gardner recognizes, then the application of the growth mindset is really limitless, isn't it? Next slide. Think of professional athletes. They certainly aren't born champions. They have to work at it consistently, learning about their sport and themselves along the way. They develop expertise over time, or what Gardner refers to as bodily kinesthetic intelligence. American gymnast Simone Biles wasn't performing seemingly impossible feats from the balance beam when she was 5 years old. In fact, she first tried gymnastics at the age of 6 during a daycare field trip. A few weeks ago, I watched a documentary on HBO about the last 5 years of David Bowie's life. I happen to be a huge fan of this late artist's music. The film focused mainly on the creation of his final album, Black Star, and another project I wasn't aware he had worked on in his final years. Bowie knew he had cancer and he knew his time was running out. He had always wanted to write a musical. It was on his bucket list. 1 year before he died, at the end of 2015, Lazarus premiered on the stage. This slide shows a still from one of the performances. As I was watching David Bowie the last 5 years, there was a scene depicting a busy cityscape with a recording of him speaking over it. And here's what he said. If you feel safe in the area you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching bottom, you're just about the right place to do something exciting. Bowie's growth mindset allowed him to achieve something he'd always wanted to at the age of 68. A growth mindset can follow you through your life and well into your retirement. Grandma Moses took up painting at the age of 78. Her work, Sugaring Off, sold for $1.2 million in 2006. 78, she started painting. Of course, she saw none of that money, but sadly that seems to be the case with many artists. I changed my career at 40. I'm now a senior product designer at Liberty Mutual. I was fresh out of my certificate program at General Assembly when I applied for a contract role at Liberty. My experience with UX was brand new. My portfolio consisted of a group of classroom assignments. A year or so after I got the job, I asked my coworker, who had interviewed me, why they chose to hire me with so little UX experience. She said my interpersonal skills were what set me apart. The hiring team was more interested in hiring someone who could work well with a team and was able to present. In other words, what set me apart from other candidates was not just a design portfolio, but what Howard Gardner would call my interpersonal intelligence. These were not skills I was born with. I don't know if you remember me mentioning earlier that public speaking was out of the question for me several years ago. I still feel awkward and anxious every time I stand in front of a group and present, like right now, for example. But I chose to adopt a growth mindset when it comes to public speaking. I chose to push myself. I chose to leave my comfort zone. When I agreed to talk to you all today, my feet were certainly not touching bottom, and it is exciting. Over the past 3.5 years at Liberty Mutual, I've been hired full-time from contract and promoted to senior product designer. I've been given several opportunities to facilitate design sessions, learn new software applications, and lead design initiatives. I've taken all these opportunities, even if they took me out of my comfort zone, even if I didn't have the experience. I took them because of my growth mindset. Not only has my career benefited, but I've gained confidence that I never had before. Not every employer offers an environment that supports the growth mindset. If yours doesn't, I suggest finding one who does. I'm going to leave you with these words from Carol Dweck. This person is someone with extraordinary abilities who achieved with little effort. Now go find out the truth. Find out the tremendous effort that went into their accomplishment and admire them more. Think of the times other people outdid you and you assumed they were smarter or more talented. Now consider the idea that they just used better strategies, taught themselves more, practiced harder, and worked their way through obstacles. You can do that too if you want to. Are there situations where you get stupid, where you disengage your intelligence? Next time you're in one of those situations, get yourself into a growth mindset. Think about learning, improvement, not judgment, and hook it back up. You don't get a growth mindset by proclamation. You move toward it by taking a journey. And these are my words. While you're on that journey, it's so important to practice self-compassion. While we'd all like to say we put our growth mindsets into practice 100% of the time, there will inevitably be moments where the fixed mindset manages to push its way back through. In these situations, self-awareness to acknowledge that it's taking over actually helps you grow as a person. Life will bring you setbacks and failures at times, but it's what you make of these unpleasant instances that matters. It's what you learn and how you react and recover that will let the growth mindset back in. And when it's back, the piece that I was speaking about earlier, every time I was afraid to do something or it made me anxious and I just didn't want to do it, and I would just push myself a little bit harder and just kind of keeping those thoughts in mind that, hey, you know what, if I mess this up, it's okay. I'm going to try it again, and I'll do it better next time. I honestly didn't even know that was what is called a growth mindset. I just kind of knew that it was helpful to me when I was looking for a way to succeed. So,
thank you for sharing that. So for our next question, it came from Anita, and Anita asks, do you think that most people stay in jobs too long, where they're too settled or not growing? How did you know it was time for a career change?
I actually love this question. I was thinking about this the other day too. I do think that happens frequently, and I think it's a really easy trap to fall into. There's something about comfort that is comforting. I mean, it feels great to just do the same thing sometimes every day and sort of know what's expected of you and not really have to, change it up. But one of the ways that I knew, as I spoke about earlier, I could always tell when I started to dread going to work. I just knew that it was time. It was time for a change. It was time. I wasn't learning. I wasn't growing. So that would be one of the first signs. And then I actually was asked to leave a couple of jobs, and not fired, not laid off or anything like that, but just I worked for a couple of people in small businesses, and they said, listen, you need to go. Like, it's time for you to go and do this on your own, and to grow more. Like, you're done here. So So sometimes other people can actually be really helpful in those situations, and you should definitely listen to them because they typically know what they're talking about.
Oh, that's very well said. Thank you. Well, I think this will be our last question, and then we will ask you for some final thoughts. And this question said, growth mindset sounds exhausting and hard. Can you still have a growth mindset while staying put and doing your job and not always pushing?
You definitely can. And here's the thing. Some people don't want to push at their jobs in particular. It's more about growing as a person. So you can think back to that slide I showed with Howard Gardner, and those different types of intelligence. He said there were about 9 of them. There are so many ways that you can grow. For example, maybe you decide, I never learned how to play piano. This might be a good time for me to sign up for those lessons virtually and just, learn that skill. And those things that you can do even outside of work that are fulfilling, sometimes that's just enough, You really just kind of have to ask yourself, I think, whether you're happy and, if you feel you're on the right path.
Well, Bethany, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or a networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.